I think the one thing that I just keep getting beat over the head with in technology is like, no matter how much you want something, the world has to kind of conspire to provide the opportunities for the things to exist. You can't just brute force it. Like the world has to assemble it. Now you can do a bunch of brute forcing behind the scenes and then the world figures it out and then it's takeoff. That's kind of how most great things end up working. But you also have to recognize that like you're signing up for that brute forcing thing. Now I think we have lived through like what has happened in technology, like, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like that was sort of tail end of the mobile wave. There was a lot of like vertical SaaS and SaaS companies. And like that was a lot of what VC was excited about, was like SaaS companies. Okay, well, they don't really have a need for Bitcoin, and that's where all the growth is. And they grow revenue and they grow share price. And so the incentives over the last, call it 10 years, have been mostly directed at increasing share price through, vertical SaaS revenue growth. And that's like Bitcoin doesn't really have a role in that. I think the exciting thing about this moment is that we have the new ingredients of AI, and it's going to fundamentally rewire everything. Like there's nobody who's really like safe from AI unless they're already investing in AI. So that goes all the way from like the smallest startup to Mag 7. If you're a small startup with a bunch of good revenue today, but you're not AI, you almost can't get funded. It's like, sounds bizarre, but that's actually true. You can't be like, oh, we have 5 million ARR, but we don't have any AI story. They're like, okay, next. But they don't want to talk to you. So I think it's important to focus on what the new ingredients are and how they can enable growth in the future. And I think the new ingredients of AI mean that we cannot we can build things on our own hobbies with no venture capital and prove that something is exciting and valuable and needed and useful. And we can do it with Bitcoin if we want. And some people will figure out where Bitcoin is effective, and we'll build AIs with AI tools. And those AIs will need Bitcoin, not just like want Bitcoin or ideologically believe Bitcoin will be better in 20 years, but they'll actually need Bitcoin to receive payments. There's no other way to pay an AI except for the AI to hold Bitcoin, right? So because it can KYC, all that. And I think that's a pretty profound shift. So in a sense, maybe we've been fighting gravity. We've been saying Bitcoin, 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 it should be there. Why don't people listen? But really what we need is we need the world to kind of conspire in a way that now it's just obvious because it's the only credible solution for the thing that we're trying to do.
Yeah, I would add a couple things to that. I mean, I 100% agree with your point. Don't fight gravity, right? Like at the end of the day, one of my heroes, Buckminster Fuller, one of his great quotes is, don't fight forces, use them, right? And so I would say there are many dimensions to this question. And it's also a good reminder that capital, it's not, there's no homo economicus, like there are different pools of capital, different mandates, different people controlling them, different visions for what that can do for the world, frankly, different goals for that capital, right? And I think in general, people with capital want to make more capital for sure. But at the same time, I also agree with Steve's point. Like there are people with different ethical standards, right? Like this whole like shitcoin thing to me is extremely nihilistic and also probably should be illegal, but that's a separate question. I'm not going to get into that, but you can probably guess my views. And so, I do think that, there's different pools of capital, or maybe it's like, hey man, already a billionaire, want to squeeze a few more out by like doing some payday lending. Like, I mean, that's your game, so be it. It's not my game. There's a lot of capital that's not their game either. But at the same time, it'd be easy to sit here and be like, why doesn't the world understand what we're working on? They're so dumb. And they're not dumb. I agree with DK's point. People are very rational. And I would say it comes down to strategy and timeline, right? So on the timeline question, you're asking me who am I bullish on in 20 years, Stripe or Block? All this not financial advice. Block. Why? Stripe, they're hotter in Silicon Valley. They've got, all the sexy hires and this and that. They're going to make a lot of money on their tempo thing, which by the way, when Lightspark or Facebook did that,
Block does sexy hires.
Yeah. yeah. But you know what I mean? Block's great. But so do I think short term, let's say I'm a trader, comes down to traders versus investors in timeline. If I'm going to put money in the short run, do I think Stripe's going to go in there and just absolutely, raid the cupboard, make a whole lot of money, just like the shitcoiners did the next 5 years? Totally. I think it's a great investment. Do I think that, but there's trade-offs, and that's the thing that everyone has to understand. By doing that, they're focusing on, they're going to raid the cupboard, make a lot of money in the short run. But when the Bitcoin payment network, and my thesis has always been Bitcoin is Internet of Value. It scales vertically, TCP/IP, HTTP. We're building the HTTP or SMTP on top of Lightning and all the, edge use cases. When that time comes, and they've been raiding, playing fiat games and winning fiat prizes, in 5 to 10 years, when everyone realizes Bitcoin is the internet, it's not the information superhighway. You got it wrong. It was the internet. Who do you think is going to be way farther ahead? Be able to attract the best talent, know who the best talent is, have all the infrastructure ready to rock and roll. Is it going to be, yes, they're good engineers, but they've devoted, 95% of their time building this thing that's going to die. Like if you just think about it for a minute, like all the tempos that we talked about this on PBJ, like think about it. They're building a database, just a database. It's a little bit of theater around it, but it's a database. Do you think audience is going to use their database? Absolutely not. Is when Google launched one, is Facebook going to use their database? Absolutely not. And then you're going to go through the wars of like, they're going to go through all the things we've gone through as Bitcoiners many times. They said, well, who's going to market make between them? Man, wouldn't it be cool if we were in some interoperable network, which is how Visa emerged. And that's what Bitcoin is, internet. So anyways, so in that time horizon, I'm betting on Block all day, every day, because first of all, I know who's finding the best talent in the world. And they're just so far ahead of the competition, it's going to be impossible to catch them, is my view. But that's a time horizon, right? The other thing I would say is you also, as an investor or a founder, we can be very ideological, and we're very lucky that many people in this space are. That's going to change. Just like the early internet, there was a lot of ideologues. Back when it was the well, it was better. But like eventually, companies come in, this and that. But you also have to earn the right, in my opinion, to be an ideologue. You can't just die. You can't just like, we need the sort of largesse of the billionaires to help us out. And we're grateful that we have that, but like that comes and goes. And so from that perspective, if I just put on my, I want to make money hat in the public markets, again, not financial advice, but like MicroStrategy is where it's at, because you look at how things are going step by step. It's like, first you just buy Bitcoin and hodl. Then you realize, we can speculative attack the dollar by taking infinite monopoly money, buying up the scarce asset. Wonder who's going to do really well in that 10-year horizon. MicroStrategy is in my opinion, the perfect money making strategy. I'm skeptical on all the other companies. But the more you use that strategy of where we are with the forces of nature, which is accumulate the Bitcoin, the more you earn the right to do the cool things. And so I mentioned like all the infrastructure companies that I invested in. I think one of the most underreported stories, Block's in this case too, Tesla's in this case, is they all buy Bitcoin. And because they're ideologues, they're never going to quit. And so they're earning that right by doing really well, just by like, as Bitcoin goes up, right? Like we're crazy. We think it's going to $10 million a coin. They may not ever need to raise again. And in that world, they've earned the right to do the right thing and to be there when the internet catches on. That's the way I do it.
DK, I just wanted to circle back to the point that you made about the intersection between Bitcoin and AI, just to go a little bit deeper into that, because we're moving into the brainstorming side. So in terms of use cases or product ideas or anything that's come to you and feel comfortable to share what you feel comfortable sharing, what are some of the ideas and the intersections where Bitcoin meets AI that you think might really be needed right now and in future? And that question for all of you is.
But I could imagine, like right now, I'm working on a new idea that I just started this week, and it helps people with video generation. And video generation has a cost to it. So to use the underlying APIs like Gemini, Seed Dance, Seed Green, Kling, those are some of the popular ones. You have to actually pay to use those APIs. But if I want to present that to a user to be able to interact with on the web, I need to collect some money from that. It's just some idea I came up with. I started making this thing. How am I going to collect payments? Well, if they're in the US and they have credit cards, great. I don't think they want to use Apple Pay or Stripe or whatever. I don't have that card built, but I could imagine that like some people will want that. But I could imagine there's people in the world who might want to use this kind of service who don't have the ability to use the Stripe rails or they aren't on the credit card networks. So and that's just like a very concrete example where I want to provide this service to people. I don't know if they can all pay me in the traditional way. So I would like to also accept Bitcoin as a way to pay. And then they can self-select for whatever way they want to pay. Like in a sense, I like to try to be non-ideological about it, just with my own interest is like, hey, if it's helpful, use it. And I hope to discover places where it could be helpful and inspire places where it could be helpful. But I don't want to tell you, go build, pay me a Bitcoin because I said so. Because otherwise, then what's going to happen is somebody else will build a competitive service and just accept it over Visa network, right? So I want to in a sense, create moments to discover what the where Bitcoin really shines for payments, where it's required in a sense, or where the customers choose to use it compared to the alternatives. And I think that's just like a simple example because there's a cost and you can charge for it, so you can sort of bridge that. And because it's on the web, so it's not in an app store, so you can do that. But I think there's there's all kinds of examples. I mean, I've said before, I think the adult stuff and the gaming stuff are areas that that's basically how the internet got a lot of product market fit. Steve's about to.
We hear this from DK a lot.
Bitcoin Core V30, it optimizes for the porn.
But I mean, it does drive a lot of innovation because it's
Follow the Twitter debate.
What does that mean?
It's part of the Knots versus Core debate. The Knots crowd saying that Bitcoin Core is optimizing for more.
I learned something new today.
Like gambling and gaming drove a lot of early internet. I don't know if you remember it. Steve and I met when we worked on the mobile team at Google, kind of pre-Android. It was very early, and I remember that back in those early days, 60% of the mobile search queries were for adult content at Google. See, and you don't think of Google as some adult type of service. You just it's just Google search, right?
Even Google Maps queries.
Are you serious?
Damn.
Not that high, but there was a material amount of adult queries.
But I'm not advocating for that as a type of service. I'm saying that is just revealed preference. That's what people choose to do. If you put up a box, people choose to do that. And I think that Bitcoin can support Bitcoin and Bitcoin payments, the privacy you get, Lightning payments, is probably one of the it's not just a nice to have, there's more of a need to have in some of those situations. But I mean, we're just talking, you could have, there's infinite creativity in the world. We're not going to design all the best ideas. But when you sort of open up the toolkit of anybody with an idea, even with no technical knowledge, just basically have an idea, you can now make it. And you can say, copy the stuff from Matt's GitHub and now you can actually accept Bitcoin payments, even if you don't really know anything about Bitcoin or Lightning, or you just I want to accept payments. You can do that now. And that's a massive innovation. That's a massive change in the world. That's you're no longer fighting gravity. Gravity's, you're just chasing off the building ledge. You're sort of falling, and it's it's a tailwind now.
Sorry. I wanted to add one thing to that. So I agree with DK on the sort of gray areas of the internet. That's Silk Road. That's how Bitcoin got big in the first place. And I think that I'm surprised we haven't seen more with marijuana. I think that's an area they only do cash and expect some more of that happening. Torrents, incentivized torrents. That's an area I'm very interested in. But in terms of the more palatable things, two things I want to highlight. Number one, we've talked a lot about this digital life. In the future, if you really want to have autonomous digital life, Bitcoin's the only answer. So I think DK and Matt have a surprise I won't tell them about, but they have a brilliant idea that allows you to maybe fund some AI. So that's really cool. Second thing I'll say is I think people that just want to vibe code, but for whatever reason, can't touch the traditional rails. So that could be because you live in the wrong country, like India, or is something that I actually am getting increasingly convicted on. I was put in touch by a friend. There's this whole Substack world I wasn't even aware of. And he put me in touch with someone from an energy Substack. Extremely brilliant. I talked to the kid. I'm like, who the fuck is this that knows all of this about energy markets? Is so incredibly intelligent. And the kid looks like 25 max. For all I know, this kid's 16. And I'm thinking to myself, that's right though. The smart, think about this. Many of you guys in the audience, many of the people you knew when you were kids, the smartest people. I mean, you were smart when you were 16 in high school.
As you get older, everyone looks really young.
Well, I felt old in this conversation. Kind of sucks, but anyways, such life. But increasingly, I'm like, well, think about you double that up. There's a kid in India who's 16. Why can't they build the biggest business in the world? They probably will. And they use Stripe? No, they don't even have an ID, or they're not legal. So I'm also very bullish on these sort of NIMs that are probably the genius kids. That's probably what's going to pop.